Okay. So now we're going to cover part 2 of our 3-part series on exercise. And in the first part, we covered all the odds and ends, things that you really need to know. And now we're going to get a little bit more specific on what do I do to truly optimize my exercise. And this can be really useful for the busy mom, dad, executive. Says, you know, I just want to spend 20 minutes a day and really max out the results on 20 minutes a day, not for performance reasons, but for health reasons. These principles we're going to cover applies to them. If you are into competition, all you have to do is take it to the next level. But again, have it be optimum. The average Tour de France winner today is working out 60% less time than just 25 years ago. Okay? And they're getting better results. It's amazing to watch how these guys perform for 21 days, just doing just unbelievable. The feats they do is just unbelievable to me. But it's done with smart training. And that's what made me really aware about 25 years ago. Oh, you mean I don't have to work out 2 hours a day to be really fit? I can do it maybe in half hour to 45 minutes a lot of the time. Okay, with a longer thing on the weekends. Yes, you can. So train smarter, not harder. And remember, food is your fuel. Interval training is rule number 1. This was a game changer when it was first introduced. So instead of doing those long runs or long swims, long bike rides, long whatever, we figured out that if I can get my heart rate to its absolute maximum, have it come down significantly, do it again for just 10 to 20 seconds per time, not longer, and you do between 5 and 7 of those, so you're talking only 15 minutes here, folks, yeah? That 15 minutes will outperform an hour of that exercise to hour and a half of that exercise, benefit-wise. It's huge. So now, for some people, an hour and a half of continuous, fairly hard exercise is destructive because they only got 4 hours of sleep, they worked for 10 hours, and then they go home and do that. That's destructive exercise. But they can do interval training because it's less stress on the body with better results. You secrete something called growth hormone when this happens, and we like growth hormones for the musculoskeletal system because it builds strong muscles. And growth hormone then weighs well with weights. So let's say you did some interval training yesterday, and today you're going to do 15 to 20 minutes of weights. You have just tripled the benefit of your weight training. Tripled. See how gaming the system makes you smarter? Makes you not smarter, but you get better results faster. So, and then for endurance training, this still applies, but obviously you can't get away without putting on the miles. You have to do it. And the things that strikes me about my marathon people is they're just kind of winging it as far as, well, I'm just going to make sure I can do it, and I want to do it under 4 hours. That's my goal. And I usually ask, so do you know how many minute miles you have to run? And they don't. I says, well, it's about 9 minutes every mile. So at what pace should you be training? 9-minute miles, right? Otherwise you're not going to make it, folks. It's just super simple math, but that's what gets ignored. A lot of these people just run at various speeds, and it just doesn't work in endurance. So in endurance, you got to be pretty steady with some interval training and some weights. So optimizing your exercise and really become the best athlete. I became aware of this when I saw a study in hockey players, and now it's gone into baseball players and some other types of sports also. The very, very best athletes are the kids that grew up in the country. Small city, small town folks. The ones that grew up in cities and were hyper specialized since age 4, right? you're going to be the best baseball player ever. They usually made it to one level below kind of a field, kind of playing. So that would be the feeder teams. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is variety. When you're growing up in the country like I did, climbed the trees, right? Jumped across creeks, yes, got wet many times. You know, you did all these things. And I never really specialized in anything. And that's well-roundedness is what creates a really good athlete. And we can do the same here by using the seasons, right? Might as well. They happen. So in the winter, cross-country skiing. Why not? It's awesome. Or one of my favorites, hiking through deep snow. Man, that's a workout, right? And it doesn't take any special equipment. You're outside, you're embracing the season, but it's cold, yes, and guess what? You get used to that within a week, right? Just do it. So use the seasons. Obviously this season, you can do all kinds of fun things like long bicycle rides, and you really have to try to adapt to the season, and that gives you that variety that I want. You're working out different parts of the body, creating that overall ultimate fitness and also ultimate health. Because there's pros and cons to each type of exercise, isn't there? That's why you want to mix it up. Here's an interesting one: injury prevention and movement optimization. Big words, but what we do here is something called functional movement screening. So as we develop as an infant, and I've had the privilege of having 5 kids, and each kid, it was remarkable to me, at different stages of infancy, would do different things. You remember that, picking up your little one and it would just arch backwards? Don't do that, you're hard to pick up that way. And that would last a couple of weeks. And then after that, it'd be whenever you pick them up. And then it was laying on the side and going back and forth, then rocking on all fours. You remember that phase with some of your kids? These are all different types of exercises that we developed. It's nervous system driven to get different parts of the musculoskeletal system good at certain movements, so that there's a good interplay between brain and body. And that's how we develop our proper motion. And then we spend the rest of our lives wrecking it. Yeah? Injuries, compensation, repetitive work, all kinds of things that we really just, and eventually, you know, you're walking around like this and you got a limp. And it's actually a funny little story. So I have a patient, he's 75, and he has quite a limp. And he walks with a cane. And he was telling me how he's worried about his grandkid who's playing soccer. He plays soccer with that exact same limp because he thinks his grandpa's so cool, so he's walking and running like him. And he says, I'm afraid it's going to become permanent, Doc. So, pretty cute. But as we develop these deficits, we need to undo that. So we've developed this scorecard where we do certain exercises with you. Just watch, for example, how you do a squat a certain way and see which way the knee goes, for instance. And we have a whole system that we've designed, and then out of that we figure out what's too tight, what's too loose, what's too weak, what's too strong, what's the balance front to back, side to side, and figure out exactly where's your deficit, and these are the 3 exercises to correct it. So it's something I've really been wanting to do for the last 3 decades, and it's finally into motion, because that is the ultimate tool at becoming well-balanced and injury-proof. So I'm treating this one patient, and we've treated her for several months with pretty severe sacroiliac pain, and it just keeps recurring every time she exercises. She's fine if she doesn't exercise, she's an athlete, but that was not acceptable. We did different things, different exercises, nutraceuticals, and 80% of the time that fixes it. Now it's just getting worse. So x-rays, some degeneration, but not out of control. And so I suggested this. We figured out exactly what was going on with that. Gave her 3 exercises. We just rechecked her 2 weeks later. She, in her words, 99% better, Doc. Yeah, 99% better. Amazing. So if you can just get those muscles to fire up that don't fire up, it's amazing what you can do. So that's That's that. It's a unique tool. And then talk about injuries itself. So, ice. It's become a little bit controversial, by the way. There's a few studies coming out that say ice doesn't really help. But I can tell you this, it doesn't hurt. Okay, how's that? And I think in some cases it's definitely, especially if there's swelling, and that's going to get in the way of circulation getting to it, right? And the way to repair. If you can reduce swelling, it's got to help. But it's not a slam dunk as it used to be. And here's where I'm going to get controversial, but I know I'm right because it's written in all the journals and I've seen it myself firsthand. So immobilization is the worst thing to do for an injury. I've been fighting this one since I've been in practice. If you sprain your ankle and it's not broken, please walk on it, move it. It's how it heals, because the healing starts within hours of your injury. New layers of ligament, tendons, muscles are being put down, and if it heals in a non-stressed position, it's going to be weak from there on out, because the body will only repair it to what's necessary. Just like you develop biceps when you lift weights, it's really the body repairing the muscle to the stress. It's the same thing with ligaments and tendons. Okay? So you gotta keep it moving, but God also gave us common sense. It's called pain. If pain is way excessive and you're shaking from it, obviously that's not a good idea. Maybe you should just be moving your ankle this way instead of weight bearing at that point, right? So let's use some common sense there. And there's some really interesting new nutraceuticals that have really revolutionized how we deal with injuries. One of them is called collagen. This has been a patented powder. It's about 10 times as strong as normal collagens that are out there. And this assists the body in laying down new ligaments, tendons, cartilaginous tissue, and it affects skin dramatically too. I put a patient on it, and she's a long distance patient, and she gave me a call. She said, "Is it okay if my dad uses it too? He noticed my skin is so much nicer." I says, okay. I said, it'll do him good. But collagen has 14 large clinical trials proving how well it works. My very first patient that I put on this, I did for bone-on-bone hip degeneration, and he refused to get a new hip. And even though I referred him out for it, and I said, well, I have one other solution then, and it's called collagen. And he's my first patient that I put on this. 6 months later, took an x-ray, got goosebumps as I looked at the x-ray because there's a fresh layer of cartilage. And he tells me, I don't even think about it anymore. Used to not be possible even 3 years ago. Okay, so this is the same stuff that orthopedic surgeons inject into joints, and there's no contraindications, it works. Our most powerful way to reduce inflammation quickly, and this has been known to actually even replace opioids for pain, is a combination of proteolytic enzymes that we have in a small pack that gets rid of all the inflammatory material around a joint, ligament, or tendon so the body can get to work actually repair it without any scar tissue. It's because it reduces the inflammation so dramatically. It's called Pain Protect because it reduces pain very dramatically as well. I've seen it used for getting patients off opioids when they're addicted, so it's pretty cool stuff. And the one thing that gets ignored time and again by most physicians is you have to complete the recovery. It's one thing to get the patient mobile. It's one thing to get them up and moving, but you want them back to where they were or it will keep happening again. So if you have an ankle injury, for instance, you better be at some point working out on a Bosu ball, you know, that unsteady one, and maybe even catching a medicine ball while you're doing it. So you're working out the whole chain of moving parts and strengthen it back to normal again. It's not good enough to get out of pain and stable. You've got to work it to the max. It takes quite a bit, and that's generally a 6 to 8 month journey for most people. Okay, so we're going to cover part 3 of our 3-part series, and this is going to be on the science of sports nutrition.